a child, a bride. The same face repeated in the family Bible, generation after generation. In the heart of Appalachia, where the ridges rise like jagged teeth, there lived a family that defied law, nature, and even the judgment of God. Their secret? A chain of marriages between fathers and daughters, 8 generations without breaking the cycle. Some call it the deepest family curse America has ever known. Others, a story too horrifying to speak aloud. But the land remembers. The walls of their cabins remember. And if you listen closely enough, you'll hear the whisper of children calling for their father and their husband in the same breath. The story begins in the late 1700s, when settlers pushed into the mountains, carving out homesteads in the wilderness. Most families built communities, traded, worshipped together. But not this one. They chose the ridge, high, remote, and isolated. Their cabin windows stayed shuttered. No visitors were welcomed inside. Even their smoke drifting above the tree line was a warning. Local preachers recorded unseemly practices, but refused to name them. Court records show marriages with missing mothers, children listed without fathers, and sometimes both blank, as though the officials themselves were afraid to put ink to the truth. Over time, whispers hardened into warnings. Travelers were told, "Don't go near the ridge. Don't ask questions about that family. Don't look too long at their children's faces." The neighbors noticed strange details, children who looked eerily alike, even across decades. Men and women with hollow stares, pale eyes without color. Some said the girls looked more like sisters than mothers and daughters. Others swore they could not tell who was wife, who was child. By the 3rd generation, deformities began to show. Crooked bones, stunted growth, wide staring eyes that never seemed to blink. Yet still the cycle continued. The father would take the daughter would bear his children. Then another daughter would grow, and the pattern would repeat. 8 generations. Think about that. A child raised to call her father both parent and husband. A mother forced to watch her daughter walk the same path she once did. It became less a choice and more a ritual, a family religion. Locals whispered of ceremonies inside the cabin, where daughters were given away, not to strangers, but to their own fathers. One traveling preacher in 1824 wrote in his diary of a marriage of bloodlines bound tighter than God ever intended. He claimed he heard weeping through the cabin walls, but when he knocked, no one answered. By the mid-1800s, the bloodline had already begun to rot. Children were born who could not walk, who never spoke, who cried like animals in the night. One girl was said to sit in her rocking chair from dawn to dusk, whispering the same word again and again. "Mama, sister, mama, sister." Graves dotted the hillside near the cabin, small mounds marked only with stones, no names, no dates, as if the family themselves wanted the children forgotten. And yet, the bloodline endured. Some believed they were cursed and could not stop. Others whispered they were protecting something, some ancient secret buried in their blood. Whatever the truth, the ridge grew darker with every passing year. By the 4th generation, the family's silence had become legendary. Travelers described seeing children peering through the cracks of the shutters, their mouths opening, but no words escaping. Doctors, when finally called, recorded conditions no one had a name for. Children born with fused spines, twisted jaws, and blank, colorless eyes that seemed too large for their skulls. A midwife who dared attend a birth on the ridge told her husband she saw an infant with no ears at all. She never returned. The records list her simply as moved away, but locals claimed she vanished in the woods, her body never found. The cabin on the ridge had become less a home and more a prison where mothers and daughters lived side by side, each one knowing her fate was sealed by the very man who raised her. By the late 1800s, the family's story reached a breaking point. Newspapers began to take interest. One article in a county paper referred to a peculiar household of half-wits and invalids. The language was cruel, but even cruelty can't erase the truth. The family was collapsing under the weight of its own blood. Children were dying younger, adults rarely lived past 40. Still, the cycle persisted. When one daughter was buried, another would quietly take her place as both child and wife, a pattern so grotesque it became routine. And yet, there was no rebellion. No record of a girl running from the ridge, no son refusing to carry on. It was as if the family were bound by an unseen chain, tied to their father, their husband, their blood, bound until death. And even then the cycle continued. In 1903, a traveling preacher climbed the ridge, determined to break the curse. His journal, later discovered in an abandoned church, tells a chilling story. He described a girl, no more than 13, already heavy with child. Her hair cropped short, her eyes wide, staring as though she were both terrified and empty at the same time. The preacher begged the father to release her, to let her come down the ridge and join a church family. The father's reply was simple: "She is mine in all ways." That night the preacher fled. He wrote only one more sentence before closing his journal forever: "This family is wedded to itself, and the devil walks their halls." After that, no preacher dared visit again. The ridge grew silent once more, silent but not forgotten. Deep in the woods behind the family cabin, locals say there is a clearing. A place where the earth rises in uneven mounds, marked not by gravestones but by crude wooden crosses long since rotted away. Hunters stumbled upon it in the 1920s. They claimed the graves were shallow, the bones sometimes uncovered by rain, small skulls with jawbones too thin, eye sockets too wide. No official survey was ever taken. The county sheriff at the time dismissed it as old pioneer burials. But witnesses insisted the bones were different. "Not right," one said. Children's skeletons with spines curved like broken branches, skulls cracked as though they never hardened. For decades, the cemetery was left untouched, the undergrowth swallowing it whole. But the silence around it remained louder than any truth spoken aloud. By the mid-20th century, whispers of the family had become an embarrassment to local authorities. Teachers were told not to mention it. Records of births and deaths disappeared from county offices. Photographs that once existed were quietly destroyed or locked away in private collections. But absence does not erase memory. Old-timers remembered. They spoke in hushed tones of girls who never went to school, of boys who could not walk upright, of infants who were baptized but never named. A courthouse clerk who once attempted to piece together the lineage admitted every line circled back, fathers and daughters, always. His notes vanished from the archive soon after. It was as though the family had been swallowed whole by silence, a silence more intentional than accidental. By the 1970s, the ridge was nearly abandoned. Only one family remained, their cabin collapsing in on itself. A social worker was sent after neighbors reported hearing screams in the night. She found 3 girls living with a man in his 60s. 2 of the girls were visibly pregnant. The report she filed was brief, clinical, stripped of emotion. Severe neglect, possible incest. Within weeks, the cabin burned. The cause was never determined. No bodies were recovered, though locals swore they saw figures running into the woods that night. Thin silhouettes with long hair, faces too pale to belong to the living. Whether those girls survived or perished in the fire, no one can say. The official record ends there. The story, however, does not. Today the ridge is overgrown. The cabin is gone. The graves, if they still exist, are hidden beneath decades of brush and shadow. But the story lingers, passed in whispers, recorded in fragments, haunting those who dare look too closely. Did the line truly end with the fire? Or does it continue, hidden deeper in the hollows, in families who refuse to speak their truth? Some claim they've seen pale faces at the edge of the trees. Others say they've heard a girl's voice calling from the dark, calling for her father and her husband in the same breath. The records may be gone. The officials may deny it ever happened. But the silence itself tells the truth. And the truth is this: America's deepest family secret was never buried. It still breathes, somewhere,